Chase
So
wants
this
to talk to Anthony about street epistemology.
so you can understand why I want to take the call.
Yeah.
What's going on, Chase?
Hey, how you doing, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, yeah. Thanks for
Doing
calling.
good. Yeah.
What do you want to chat about?
Well, I wanted to ask Anthony about the recent video that you just put online with Caleb. I thought it was really interesting video.
Tell us about it.
Do you want to give a little bit of a recap for the audience so that they can catch up?
Yeah, sure.
Or I can if you want. Doesn't matter.
About 4 years ago. Well, I guess it was in 2014. You met Caleb out on the street, and he was kind of doing some street preaching, and he was very exuberant and outspoken and outgoing, and he seems like a really nice guy, but he seemed very zealous in his beliefs. And then, 4 years later, I guess in 2018, you filmed another interaction with him, and his demeanor was very different than the original video. And that was part of what I wanted to touch on a little bit was I was curious if he reached out to you first or if you reached out to him. I mean, that seems like a long time to go without speaking and then to get back in touch.
Okay, so if I remember right, we exchanged emails, and I probably just said, I think we had a little bit of an email exchange going back and forth because I think he said that his view was dependent on contradictions being true. But yeah, I don't remember the exact, I don't remember how we decided to meet again, but we did meet again in December of 2018. And yeah, his demeanor was completely different. Now, who knows what the cause of that was? It could have just been early in the morning. He could have just had a really good night's rest, or, who knows what was driving that change of behavior. And it was only 2 data points, but yeah, he seemed to grown. And I think I grew also. Like if you watch that first exchange, I was arguing with him. Was I really arguing with him? I was really trying not to, but it was very animated. It was a lot different than the subsequent conversation. And, but what was your specific question about it?
Well, I had 2 interesting points. The first one from the most recent video, he mentioned the idea of spiritual gifts, and I thought that was really interesting. I mean, I'm a former Christian myself, and that label was new to me too. And just my takeaway from that was it almost sounds like that label is designed to sound kind of like a faux superpower or something, maybe to kind of embolden the belief holders. I was curious what you thought of that.
That was the first time that I heard the word spiritual gifts, but it was presented, if I remember right, he was saying that spiritual gifts are attributes that a human has that they can then use to help promote the word of God. And I think he was lamenting his inability to effectively communicate or street preach or preach at the pulpit, that type of thing. But I don't think we really got too much deeper into it other than that. Like, yeah, maybe that's just sort of a way of identifying characteristics that a specific person has that might be useful in the promotion of a particular religion. And then you give it this really nice, shiny name, but you have spiritual gifts. I have spiritual gifts. Wow. I need to do something with this for God. So it's probably it's probably not intentional, but it seems to me like on the surface, a kind of a sneaky way of encouraging people to go and utilize the strengths that they have for the promotion of a specific worldview. That's the impression that I got there.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I could see that. Did you happen to catch, I don't recall what denomination he was. I was just curious. Did you happen to catch that?
He mentioned millennialism. Is that a denomination? I'm not sure, but he was a young Earth creationist, but I don't know what specific denomination he was. Okay. I think I don't want to put too many words in his mouth. And it's kind of, it might be hard for viewers who are not familiar with this conversation to follow along with what we're talking about. But the point is that, at least in my view, he was willing to meet with me again on camera to continue the discussion, even though it was a very contentious first meeting. So I was pleased that he was like, I admire him for having the courage and strength to meet with me again on camera to continue the discussion, because he didn't know that I changed. I could have been the same Anthony that was in that very first video. and I didn't know what to expect. That's why I was really kind of surprised to see how much he changed too.
Right. Well, and I guess in keeping with that, that's probably a good segue. A lot of people may not understand what we're talking about here, so I'll wrap up. But I just had one last question.
Yeah.
More to the meat of of the conversation. What do you think is the best way to address his idea of what he called the totality of the circumstances? You guys compared it to a hub and a wheel and spokes.
Mm-hmm.
But
mm-hmm.
how do you? I mean, that seems to be a common theme for theists. You know, they have a bunch of. I mean, I don't mean to sound this derogatory, but a bunch of half-baked ideas a little bit, and they go, well, when you have a bunch of them, it all makes sense. But how do you respond to something like that?
Do you have any thoughts on that, Jenna? Because I certainly do. Okay.
No.
Yeah. So Caleb, I think, and we even noticed this when Jenna and I did a breakdown video of a Catholic bishop who did a critique video of street epistemology. So we did a review of that one. That is on the Street Epistemology YouTube channel. But there's a very common retort from theists that it doesn't have to be a theist. You can be really, really into immigration or your political party, and you can say, I have so many reasons for thinking that this is true. You just can't knock out one or two. That's frustrating as a skeptic to hear that, because it's my position that we should have good reasons for our position that bolster our confidence in it. And if we come to realize that it's not a good reason to our own satisfaction, that we should allow it to impact our overall confidence in the claim. But when you have a cherished belief, it's really easy to say, but I've got so many other reasons that can backfill this. So this is why I try to oftentimes ask for like a numerical assessment of how much of an impact this would have on your view. Or in the case of Caleb, are there some dependencies going on here? Because he had mentioned faith at one point. So sometimes faith is the hub of that wheel that a lot of these spokes are dependent on. Meaning, if so-and-so is convinced that they had a miracle and that's their main reason, but when you ask, how are you so sure that you had a miracle? They say, well, it's all based on faith. So sometimes digging down just a little bit deeper to see what their main reasons are really being based on can sort of be the main linchpin to the whole belief. But the only way that you're going to really identify those is to keep asking questions and say, if we discovered that wasn't true, would it lower your confidence? No. Okay. If we discovered that wasn't true together to your satisfaction, or not discovered that it wasn't true. If we discovered that you don't have a really good way of determining that that's a good reason, would it have an impact on your confidence? You can repeat that a couple of times until you identify a reason that really would lower their confidence. And you probably notice people on these shows doing this. Like, this is a really good way to figure out the main one that's propping up most of it. So it's really just a matter of repeating those series of questions till you find something that will influence it. What can be disturbing though is when somebody says, well, like, there's nothing that I could discover that would lower my confidence on this claim. And then you can ask them questions about if they have other beliefs that meet that same criteria, that you continue holding it, even if every reason that you had couldn't be justified to your own satisfaction. What I think you'll end up finding is that a lot of people, and I think we saw this in some of the previous callers, that when it comes down to it, the beliefs are meeting psychological needs and people want them to be true. So you oftentimes have to explore what the belief is giving them. What benefit is this belief yielding to you? Because if they can identify that they're deriving value from the belief and they can achieve that same value by not holding this belief or some other belief, then it might be a little bit easier for them to acknowledge that that's not a good reason.
I see.
All right.
Well, that's awesome. And that was
thanks for watching that video. There's going to be a part 2 of that probably coming up.
I'm sure that one of our mods can possibly find the video. Hopefully, maybe.
I'm sure one of my friends probably dropped the link in there already.
There you go.
I'm not watching the YouTube
somewhere.
stream. Yeah.
Well, thank you for calling and talking to us
Thanks,
about that.
Chase.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Take care, guys.
Okay.
You too.